This is a Founding Media podcast.
All right, listeners, welcome to another episode of Packing Taste. I'm your host, Axel Brave, and today we have two lovely bloggers from Austin, Texas. We have Chelsea Bancroft, who runs One Chell of an Adventure. She is an Austin blogger, very successful. And we also have Rachel Holtin. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yeah, that's right.
Is that good?
Holtin,
awesome.
yep.
Holtin. She runs Austin Foodstagram, yes.
Yeah, you said that right, too.
Said it right.
That one's hard.
I'm like
That's
doubting
a mouthful.
myself. Yeah, Foodstagram. Okay, and she's a food blogger, also very, very successful. And we're having them on the show today to obviously help me, because I'm always looking for help, but talk a little bit about having a good social media presence, what it takes, and how that's looking like for the food sector. So my first question for you ladies is, explain to me what a blogger is, like I don't know what Instagram is. So whoever wants to take the lead.
So a blogger is different than like not having an Instagram. So blogging like usually entails having a website, which we both do. So you kind of, I started as travel, and so I wrote about places that I was traveling to, and it kind of, I use mine, and I know she does as well, for, helping people out. So if someone wants to see where to go on a trip, they can look at my website. If they want some of the best recommendations in Austin for restaurants, they go to her. So that's kind of like how it is. And then an Instagram is an extension of the blog. So it's kind of, they go hand in hand.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like the term blogger's been around a lot longer.
Yeah.
Like people have blogged for years and years, and then social media has kind of amplified, what a blogger is, and has brought that to the forefront and made that kind of more of a career for people and a monetization channel. But I would say like blogging's been around forever, and it's more of, the writing and the where you're actually like thoughtfully, sharing info. And I think Instagram's just taken off in this whole new way. But yeah.
Yeah, I think when you're right, you said it very well. Blogging has been around for a while. And when I think of blogging, I would think of like typing in a website and reading a long 10-page article about whatever, travel or food. But Instagram has kind of changed that because our attention spans are so small now, and we need quick dosages of information, right? Cool. So when and how did y'all start blogging? Or can I call it blogging just so I don't get confused? Okay.
Yeah, when? So I started mine in May of 2014 and started it through Instagram. So I wouldn't even have called it blogging probably at that time, but I was just Instagramming where I was eating. And I was one of the first food influencers to kind of start. At that time, there weren't really these dedicated accounts for food and fashion and travel. Like Instagram was still, people were still figuring Instagram out if they wanted to even use that as a channel. I remember a lot of bloggers at the time were like, I don't want to take my blog over to Instagram. Like, I don't think I need it. And so it's funny to see how far we've come now. But at that time, I was just like, well, I love sharing food. I didn't think anything of it. I wasn't necessarily even trying to grow an audience, but I was spending a lot of time on the account sharing images every day and then finding other people that were eating at these restaurants. And then they started following me. And kind of from there, it was fun. It was like a game almost, because people were like so excited about what I was sharing, and it encouraged me to do more of that and just kind of build this following. So yeah, that's how I started.
I started mine. I already had a website because I had to do something in class. And after I graduated, I worked for a year, and then I decided to move to Sydney. So I lived in Sydney for a year, and I kind of redid my blog to keep up with my friends and family back home. I didn't even really like think of it as a thing that I wanted to do. And then I started sharing, and then kind of like read about it, because I don't do anything half-assed. So I was like, you can blog? And then it started to kind of kick off, and then I actually, dedicated myself to like learn and actually do it. And here we are today. But I never set out to be a blogger. I think it kind of just accidentally fell into it, and it's turned out great.
Yeah, the blogging life chooses you guys, right? And that was 2015 that you started?
That would have been 2016.
2016. Mm-hmm. Okay. And yours was 2014.
2014, yeah, May of 2014.
So that's just when Instagram was becoming cooler than Facebook, right?
Yeah, I would say even at that point it wasn't cooler than Facebook at all. I mean, people were still skeptical of the platform. They were like, how can a photo sharing platform that's so simple be, the next big thing? Why would people want to, get on here? And people weren't really sharing as much back then. So, yeah it was just kind of starting to take off, but not yet.
And did y'all always love like sharing stories, like sharing what you're seeing with your own eyes with friends, family, people around you? Because like I was telling you, your friend I met earlier, she was telling me how she's an introvert and she doesn't like being around big crowds. Like, you have 300,000 followers. What do you? So
Yeah.
Is that like, do you guys have that?
It seems kind of crazy. I feel like a lot of influencers that I meet are introverts in some way. And I was super shy growing up in high school, even through all of that, like super shy. In college, I kind of felt like I came out of my shell a little bit more. But I think social media is like a very safe place and channel where people, even though you are sharing a lot with the world, you can still feel like, you're kind of protected by this like barrier wall almost in a way. And I think that's how a lot of introverts actually ended up spending a lot of time in building and cultivating audiences. It's interesting to see like how people kind of use that fame now, because I think even for myself, like there's days where I feel uncomfortable going out and like being recognized, and it's kind of just this weird feeling because you're like, oh, like, how do you know me? Like I called my car dealer the other day and the guy looked at my name and he's like, you run that Instagram account. And we're just on the phone. I'm like, how do you know me?
What restaurant should I go eat to? Can you believe that?
But it's also cool and like validating in a certain way.
Cool.
So.
And did you like sharing stories? Because you said when you moved to Sydney, that's when you started sharing that.
So I've always done like photography. So that was my major for a little bit in college, and I did it in high school. So really, I enjoyed taking travel photos. And then I'm a decent writer, like I was in high school and all that. It's not something I totally love writing, but the photography part I do, and I do like sharing travels. So I think, yeah.
Definitely.
Long story short, yes.
And do you think there's a difference between sharing a story, so like something that actually happened, like, oh, I rode my bike from Houston to Austin, versus storytelling where you add more flair to it? Does that make sense? Storytelling versus sharing a story. Because I think when I think of storytelling, whenever I tell a story to a friend or a family, it's dramatized to the max. Everything is so passionate versus just like, oh, this is what I had for lunch today.
Yeah, there's certainly an art to it. I mean, I look at a lot of influencers post and stories regularly, and there's some that really hook me. Like a lot of influencers lately have been doing that thing when they travel where they'll like get on the plane and they're like, guess where I'm going? And then, 12 hours later they share that. And it's almost smart in a way because they're like creating this like preemptive hook, just like television shows and other networks do. They want you to come back for that next season or that next episode. So I think there is an art to that. And I think a lot of influencers are kind of catching on in like ways that they can get their audience to revisit their page and get their viewership up overall.
And your blog, Chelsea, is more of a lifestyle travel blog. Is that, you've always been into that? You've always wanted to travel since you were a little girl? Or was it like, I graduate college, I want to go see the world? No,
I've always loved travel. I always wanted to study abroad in college, and it just never happened. I never could, I had an apartment, or like I had to take this class after I got, it never worked out. And so I was really disappointed when I graduated, and I didn't know what I was doing. And so I went to the working world, and I worked for a big tech company, and I hated it. So I worked there for a year, and then I was like, it was a very spur of the moment, but I was like, I'm going to go be an au pair in Australia. So I did. And I had never been there. I booked a one-way ticket, and I lived with a family, and I got to travel a lot while I was over there because I didn't really have living expenses. So I got to see a lot of different places, and I don't get to travel as much now because I do have a full-time job outside of blogging, but I try.
Was Australia the pick because of the accent? Was that?
Well, so actually, I really wanted to go to Spain, or because I wanted to become fluent in Spanish. But the whole visa laws over there are a little difficult, and they don't consider a nanny, like an au pair, a full-time job, like a real job. And so you can't get sponsored. Like you can't get an extended visa, but then you have to be sponsored to get another one, but you usually have to be fluent. So it's kind of like, I don't know what to do. And Australia looks great. So there we go.
Of course. And you got to travel to Bali and Thailand and all those places. Yeah. So. And Rachel, did you always have a passion for food? Was this something you loved cooking as a young girl?
It's kind of funny. Like I grew up, my parents were always really busy, and so they didn't cook a ton for us as kids, and we were eating out a lot, but my hometown was super small and we didn't have a lot of options. So I feel like until I moved to Austin, I didn't really discover that there's so many local great restaurants and places that you can go dine. And so for me, out of college at UT, starting the account, I was just encouraging myself to explore a new place every day. So the posts kind of were my diary of all the places I got to try and the adventures that I went on around Austin.
Yeah. And I didn't ask this, but where are you guys originally? You guys aren't from Austin.
I'm from the Woodlands area,
okay,
so north of Houston.
Yeah.
I grew up all over Texas. So.
All over Texas?
Houston,
Nice.
San Antonio, Houston, Beaumont, San Antonio, Austin.
Nice.
Sydney, Austin.
Do you guys have a favorite city?
Austin.
Austin.
Yeah, Austin too.
That's the correct answer. Okay.
You passed.
Yeah. How do you think having a strong online presence helps a brand? For a blogger, for a food entrepreneur, for a tech startup, how do you think the strong online presence can help them?
I think it's pretty much vital these days. Yeah. You have to have an online presence. You should have a website as a blogger or a brand, obviously. And cultivating that can help provide a platform for later selling services and products. And, I think like what I did almost with my Instagram was so unintentional, but now, having that audience, it's really great and vital. And it's like everyone kind of is trying to build that and wants to have that. So a lot of brands have been really strong in, kind of prioritizing social media and their web presence and SEO from the beginning. And I think those are the brands that we really see taking off, and that, that was just really important. And now there's a lot of brands too that are finally realizing that and starting on it. But it's something that needs to be prioritized all along. And I was really lucky when I worked for Favor Delivery and ran their social media marketing and influencer programs, because they were prioritizing that really early. They were a very innovative company, still are. And they took me in and they trusted me as one of their youngest employees to go tell the rest of the company how we were going to do our digital strategy. And so I think it's super important for brands and for bloggers, as we're also running our own brands, to build that audience.
I also think it kind of helps a consumer feel more connected to the brand as versus just being this blank company. When they have a personality and they actually show, interesting things and connect with people on social media, I feel, people are more inclined to buy with them or, interact with them. And like she said, like you have to have it. If you don't have a website, you don't exist. Like, yeah. I mean, like I would, if I Google something and it didn't exist or there was no website, I'd be like, this is fake. I don't know what I would do.
Well, yeah, I mean, we have the physical world, and now we have this very powerful virtual world.
Yeah.
And if you're not in one of them, you don't exist. You need to bring that together. And I think you make a good point. Having the strong online presence is very important because the consumer feels this constant connection with this brand. Mm-hmm. Whenever they have a question or whenever they need inspiration, they can look them up on Instagram and say, oh, this is how they made this dish, or this is what they're doing for the community. And I think having that connection is very powerful. And obviously it's like a pipeline. So information is always going back and forth. I think that's very neat. Do you guys see any cool trends happening? And you guys go out to eat very often, I imagine, and you guys get to see all the cool like new foods and new brands that come out of Austin. But do you see any cool trends happening right now with packaged foods or recipes or restaurants or diets?
I think there's definitely, a huge move away from plastic.
Which is great.
I'm a big straw girl, so that's been a change for me.
Yeah.
I've got some metal straws now, but no plastic straws in restaurants. It's been, and I know a lot of people are a little bit harsher to criticize. At least I see I see bloggers kind of criticizing companies that aren't doing sustainable methods, too much plastic and all that kind of thing. And I also think there's a big push toward more local. Like people are supporting local, especially Austin. Everyone in Austin is so proud of our city, which I love. I love that there's that push. And so those are kind of the ones.
Yeah, I think those are great. I definitely noticed too that a lot of restaurants are making this movement to appreciate their staff a lot more. Chefs are really getting the spotlight right now with like shows like Chef's Table and, not even just that, but like locally, if you look at a restaurant when they're opening now, they want their chef to be a partner and owner and to be the forefront. And they're taking really great care of those people within their business because they realize like that is the lifeline. And that's, the most important part is the food that we're going to be creating and kind of making that food more artistic in that way. Brewer's Table is a restaurant that opened this past year, but they're the first restaurant in Austin to give full benefits to all of their staff.
Really?
Wow.
So yeah, even like the waiters and stuff, they're getting benefits. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
Yeah, things like that I really love seeing.
Yeah.
And I think...
Yeah, I've seen a lot of my friends who are chefs in Houston, they have thousands of followers on Instagram. And I started realizing that being a chef now is like being a rock star.
Yeah.
Right? Is that a
It definitely can be. Yeah. I mean, these people are getting notoriety and respect for what they're creating, just like other artists have for years. And it's nice to finally have that forefront on food. And I think Instagram and social media has kind of almost helped with that because now we're able to see, what does the food look like before we go in?
Yeah.
And even though it sounds silly that a plate should look so nicely presented, it's really kind of created this movement and made a chef almost like an artist. So I love that.
Are y'all seeing any and this might be a silly question, but are you seeing any new diets like the keto diet or the gluten-free diet? Is all that
There's
stuff
always
trending?
a million. I feel like they're so trendy. I prefer what I think that a lot of people are starting to learn. And even with some of these kits coming out, I won't say they're all like amazing, like Everly Well and things like that. I haven't even tried a lot of them, but I do think the sensitivities and people being more aware of what foods are causing them to have certain issues or, to get headaches or to get tired throughout the day. So people being aware of their own bodies and, is it gluten or is it just eating too many carbs at lunch makes me tired?
Yeah.
And am I actually getting sick? Or, how precautionary do you need to be about certain foods you're consuming? And so I really see people just being smarter in general over now about what they're consuming. And I feel like, I don't know. I would love if keto was on its way out. I feel like that's
Really?
a diet. I just think diets like that, it's like, okay, they're very specific and I don't think they work for everyone. I think that everybody tries them when they become trendy and then they're like, they're seeing results or not. Like some of those diets can be really unhealthy for you because they cut out certain nutrients that you need.
Yeah, with my brand, I'm working with this media company and they're urging me to just put keto on everything. And I was like, what? What's keto? But I do get to channel into this crazy fan base of keto maniacs, which has been helpful. But I have this conflict because they want me to get this certificate that's $2,000 just for a little stamp to put on my jar, and I'm like, it's already keto. Why do I need to pay for? Anyways, so kind of to dive into the nitty-gritty stuff, now that I have two experts here on the show, I would love to get your opinion on, or I guess your outlook on what does a great online presence look like for y'all? When you look at an account or a brand, what does a good online presence look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to look beyond the feed. You can look at someone's Instagram, and the thing that's happening a lot right now, I think, is the perfect filters and the perfect feed that flows together. And that's been something that is almost I feel like every blogger's kind of started to do. And we're starting to see that shift too away from that, where Gen Z came out with there was a study done, and they said that they no longer support the perfectly curated Instagram feed. And I loved it in a way because I was like, well, I've never felt like mine was perfect either, but I was feeling that certain pressure to look and feel a certain way. So I think, what matters more is kind of the authentic voice behind each post. And if you're following someone regularly, you actually start to like learn and pick up on that. And like, what kind of person is this? And what are they sharing that's of value? Like for my account in particular, I don't want to get too personal with my audience because I'm still trying to just mostly share like restaurant stuff. Mm-hmm. But, there's also this push to like be in some of the photos and be this personality and voice. So I've kind of had to find like the right amount to share. Where I feel like people know me to a degree and trust me, but really they're just getting kind of their food news and it's coming from.
Do you think it's like almost like building a character for the account? Like this is the type of account, because on my account, I just throw whatever the hell on there. And people are like, no, Axel, you can't put a picture of you and then this and that, whatever. But is having an account like designing a character and just staying focused in that character? Or there's no rules? Or what do you think?
I think you kind of have to do it to you, like what feels authentic for you. I definitely struggle with the making sure everything flows nicely, and I used to be worse about it and just obsess, planning so it looked great. But when you really think about it, the followers that you have now, they're probably not going to look at your profile. They're probably scrolling and just want good content in general. Mm-hmm. So that's definitely something that I've been like trying to get over. But I think it kind of is to who you are, like. And it needs to fit your brand. So if your brand is not this perfectly polished brand, then you probably shouldn't have a perfectly polished Instagram. I think it should be authentic. And I think that's the big thing right now is that people want authentic following.
Yeah. So I like that you say that, be authentic to yourself. And that's what you should be representing. But my next question is, what do you think online consumers want to see and feel from a good blog or a good account or a good feed?
I think they want something of value. I mean, whatever you're talking about, whether it be travel or food or even fashion, it's like there's a reason that these influencers have cultivated these followings. And I think fashion is a great example in the sense that there's certain fashion bloggers I look to that are really big now. And when I really analyzed like what they were doing and why they were so successful and able to sell so many things on like To Know It and through these affiliate links, they were sharing just very specific content that was of value. Like one of them was a deal hunter and she found all the trendy items for a fourth of the cost of what you would buy them, designer style, and looked almost exactly identical. And you could see why people would want that content. And same with food. It's like, I really have to go out there and find like, what is the new place opening that is actually really good? They have great service. Everything's on point. People are going to want to go there. They're doing something unique and different. And those are the places that I really want to highlight and add value for the everyday Austin diner.
Mm-hmm. And do you think, so it sounds like that's more important than if you buy through my Instagram, you'll save $2 on this product. It's more of like the consumer actually wants to be connected with this brand.
Yeah, I mean, a $2 coupon code. I was talking to a PR firm earlier this week and just advising and consulting. And I was like, $2 doesn't always move the needle for everyone. Yeah. Like, I understand why a brand wants to use that promo code as a tracking measure. But if you really want to track success, give something valuable. So, maybe $5, maybe it's $10 that moves the needle for that product. Probably depends on the overall value of it. And, you know, I don't know. But yeah, I'm like, you have to make sure that the deals that you're putting out there are something that's incentivizing and that people are going to want and they're going to jump on.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But I think the underlying message there is to have a authentic message that users can connect with.
Yeah, and make sure their product's something that you believe in, that you would actually use in real life that makes it authentic.
Yeah, because I see accounts like the sponsored accounts or whatever that pop up, and I click on them. They have like 200 likes, and I click on them, and they have 50,000 followers, and it's just like, I don't know, overpaid imagery with like you get 60% off your first month subscription. It's like, what? It's cool to save money. But I'm not feeling out. Like, this isn't going to work. This
and is that a subscription that you have for the rest of the year that you forget to cancel then?
Yeah, exactly.
Thinking long term.
What about logo design? Is that like So I focus all this time and energy on making sure my logo and my packaging's nice. Does that do people now have to think like, how is this going to look in front of the camera, and how is this logo going to look in front of on someone's telephone? Is that something entrepreneurs should be focusing on?
I mean, probably, but I feel like a logo, like for a food packaging, if it looks good in person, it's probably going to look good in photos and online. But I think that's huge. I mean, I still buy things from the logo. Like, I'm terrible.
Of course.
That's how I pick wine. That's how I do everything. I'm
That's
like,
how I pick
it's
my books.
It's under $10 and
Yeah. I was going to say, for product goods, I think it definitely matters. My logo for my like personal brand was designed probably like 4 years ago and hasn't changed much. And I made it in paint. That's not bad. But I just created like a font I liked and then a color, and I was like, oh, that's all it needs to be. And then when my website designer came in, he just like made it higher resolution, but he basically stuck with the original design that I did. So
that's hilarious.
I don't know.
So I guess the logo and the packaging, as long as it looks good in real life, it'll probably translate pretty well.
I think so.
Through the phone. Okay. Cool. And we might have touched on this, but do online consumers want to see giveaways, want to see collaborations between different brands? Is that something that's popular that y'all see, that works?
I think so. I mean, I do giveaways somewhat often with brands. I think, yeah. Because, I mean, the thing is, like...
Do the brands like it when you do the giveaways? Like
they are usually the ones that want to do it.
Yeah.
Because, you know, usually to enter you have to follow, and so they get followers and you get followers, and that helps. But a lot of times, like, you actually get something pretty cool out of it, or like, you know, and you're not forced to enter it. So
yeah, I think like most social audiences like that too, because it's a way that they can, you know, enter to win, and everybody wants a chance to win something cool. Yeah. And I would just say, like, when brands reach out to me, I really want to think about like what that prize is and if it's going to drive, you know, enough entries and be exciting, because I've had giveaways with 5,000 entries and I've had giveaways with like 50.
Yeah.
So you definitely, and when you get 50, you're like, oh, dang, nobody wanted this thing, or, you know, it's like, but.
I mean, I'll take 50 followers. That's good for me.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, having two experts on here, how, and I know we can talk about this for hours, but we don't have hours. So how does one create a strong, authentic, growing online food presence? So out of all the brands y'all have worked with, think of the food ones, and what are some key things you see for like the successful food brands? And I can't think of any off the top of my head other than like Topo Chico or Wendy's. Is it important to pick a certain outlet? Is it important to test all of them out?
Yeah, I mean, I think Chameleon Cold Brew, Good Pop, Nadamu, they're all kind of local brands that have done this really, really well. And now you see Chameleon Cold Brew has gone national, and they're doing some pretty big promotions with influencers in New York this year. And they've kind of always prioritized social strategy, but in combination with a bunch of other things that they're doing events locally. They're doing, you know, obviously Facebook ads, but they're really advertising across the spectrum, which I think is important in their strategy.
Well, yeah, so I do think that going into multiple outlets is always a good call, and then seeing which ones work best and then reallocating the money. But how if a new brand is coming up to you guys and asking for advice, is there a specific outlet you would tell them, like, just focus on Instagram for now? Or, oh, you should just do YouTube and do recipes? Is there anything specific?
I think it depends on the brand.
Yeah, depends on their budget too. I mean, really, like, if you are a newer brand and you are strapped for budget, like, thinking of creative ways to get out there still are low entry ways to do, you know, a local event and invite influencers, or like, I do think that these events that people are starting to do and experiential marketing is so vital right now, and you can do that in correlation with involving influencers and people. So, you know, having a party, have the influencers come out, they share, they amplify, and that doesn't cost you a ton of money, and it's a great way to get one, the public there to try the product, but also, these influencers that you're hoping will try and fall in love with your products. That's I would say the first entry step before you start pouring, tons of money into paying for posts or paying for ads. Just get it in the hands of the people that have
a little party and bring people in.
Yeah.
And being marketers, is it a good idea to cast a wide net and see what comes in, or just focus on, I'm just going to talk to these food people, or I'm just going to talk to these chefs, or a little bit of both?
I think you should be intentional to a degree. So definitely don't just cast a super wide net. One, because when people do start responding, you might not have a strategy very specific to who's responding, because they're going to be all over the place. Maybe picking food influencers up first, and reach out to a few, see who responds. And then if you don't get enough responses, maybe find some other people that are similar that you think would spread the good word for you. But I would be intentional in your outreach and personalize it still. If you're reaching out to too broad of a spectrum, you kind of lose that personal touch and relationship that you can then create with them. Because also, if this is your first time working with influencers, the relationship part is so important. Brands like Good Pop and Chameleon that I mentioned really worked with us from the very beginning. They started doing influencer before influencer was really even a thing. And so, it's those are the first brands that come to mind for me and that I still work with and support.
Yeah. And you're the same, narrow focus.
Probably. Yeah. I do a more wide, for myself, because travel and that kind of thing can reach wider, whereas, Rachel does mostly Austin food. And so that's probably a little bit more local. So if you're trying to keep the local thing, then stay local. Yeah. But if it's a nationwide, then you want to go wide. Again, it just depends. There's never a black and white, right or wrong answer with social. It just kind of depends on your goals, what you're doing, and
Okay. And and I thought about that question because when I first started my brand, I was like, who's your target market? Who's your consumer? I want everybody. I want to sell it to everybody. And then you realize, you start testing all these things out and you're like, well, all my money's coming from over here. Why don't I just focus on these people? And it's funny hearing entrepreneurs and founders and people who are running companies always say, this needs to be everywhere, worldwide. I need to, everyone's my customer. It's well, Coca-Cola took 100 years to be Coca-Cola. So maybe focus on a narrow niche. Might be a good idea, but it seems like we're all on the same page there. So good. Now, how consistent should people be with their social media? You said earlier that the trend is leaving, having the same filter on every photo. So I want to talk a little bit about consistency, being active, being engaging. Can you guys speak a little bit about that?
Yeah. I think consistency is, it doesn't mean filters necessarily. I think you should be posting at a pretty normal rate every week. I post almost 7 times a week, 1 per day. Sometimes I miss a day, so maybe on average 6. But I'm still sharing content very regularly with my audience. And, if I do take a break, sometimes you can notice a drop in engagement. I mean, if you're totally burnt out, take a week off, whatever. But I do think that being consistent with the content that you're sharing and making sure your followers know, I also post around the same time every day. So I post early evenings. I've seen that work really well for me. If it's a weekend, I might post in the morning just because I know people might be out and about later in the day. But
is once a day. And I think I agree with you there, but once a day is probably a good rule of thumb to have, just so it pops up once a day on someone's phone, right?
Yeah, I mean, you stay on people's minds when you're on their feed every day. So
have you seen people do 4 posts a day for 7 days straight, or is that
I wouldn't recommend
too
that.
much? Yeah.
People do you think the users would get annoyed?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of moms do that. Some of my friends' moms will they'll get so excited after a family gathering. It's 20 photos in a row of everybody in the family. I'm but that's just not. Just think about if you're putting out 4 posts a day, the likelihood of someone seeing all 4 of those, and you're kind of posting over your own content at that point, so that someone who only checks Instagram once a day might only see one of those.
Yeah, I unfollow people who post that much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That too. There's the annoyance factor as well.
Not my aunts though. Not my aunts because they post too much. No. Anyways, and then being active, as in like, or I guess engaging. Mm-hmm. Should you be replying to comments? Should you replying to messages? How important is that?
Replying to comments on your own photo is huge because it helps your engagement. And then with the algorithm of Instagram, it'll show it to more people. So that's huge. Messages, probably as a brand, I get overwhelmed by direct messages sometimes, and I'll have 30 sitting in there that I'm like, sorry, I get overwhelmed now.
Yeah, but then again, you guys are actual humans doing this versus like if my brand's doing it, it's a company doing it, right? But I imagine if you'd get some.
Yeah, I mean, customer service from a brand perspective, you should answer all your customers, right? Like, hopefully they then want to buy from you. And same with influencers, I think we should answer all the messages. I do the same, though. It's like sometimes you get a lot and you
have to
overwhelmed.
Ignore some, right?
So, and some of them are spammy. So
yeah, and then some are like
just
weird. So I just don't answer those.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of weird ones.
If it's like an easy answer, they're asking like a very specific question that's like, okay, here's 2 words and it's done. Yeah. And those get responded to quicker.
If it's something that's like, if someone's asking me a question like that I can help with, then yes, I totally do. Sometimes it might be a day or two later, but like if it's a weird thing, I don't respond.
Yeah,
so.
I did want to ask what the weirdest thing has happened on your account. Like, has ever got? I'm sure you've gotten weird messages. I'm sure like weird offers. Like, come to my restaurant and I'll do whatever, feed you all your family.
How weird do you want to hear?
Oh, just anything. Whatever you're comfortable with sharing.
Oh, I'm comfortable. I'm just like, what do you want on your podcast? Because I have good ones.
You go first then.
Let's keep it between PG-13 and R. Yeah.
Okay. So this was like when I first started out, and I was like, getting new followers, and I wasn't used to it and stuff. And I had this guy message me from another country. I don't even remember where. And he sent me a picture of calamari and then his dick.
Oh my God.
And I was like, what?
Was that before they filtered the pictures too?
No, it was filtered. So like I could see what it was going to be. And I was like, what on earth? But I don't understand why dudes do that anyways. But the thing that baffled me most was, why did you send calamari first? Like literally, it was a plate of calamari. I have the screenshot on my phone.
I was trying to throw you off. He's like, here, she'll never know what's coming.
Yeah, Jesus. Okay.
I've gotten a couple of those. It's been almost a year since my last dick pic.
Yeah, good.
Feeling good about that.
Yeah, sorry about that. That's not, knock on wood. There you go.
Poor choice of words.
Yeah, no pun intended.
She's gonna cut this part.
Yeah. No, this is gonna be the 20-minute clip on Instagram, the 20-second clip. Okay, well, that was definitely a weird story. After we're done with this, I want to hear more. The content, should people focus? Again, let's keep in mind food brands and CPG companies. Should we be focusing on photos, recipes, videos? Definitely no dick pics, no calamari, but
wouldn't recommend.
Yeah. What do you think? Should we be doing it all? Do videos work better? Are videos sexier?
There's this huge push for video right now, and it's like the big buzzword, and everyone's watching video. But if you're not doing it well, or like if it's some people, I feel like it's forced. Brands, they hear video's the new thing, and they feel like they have to do video, and it just doesn't work for that brand. Then don't do that. It's a lot of work to do a video, and so I think photos is fine. But I also think switching it up. There are some consumer, packaged goods that do a great job of doing like fun little like stop motion videos, and recipes that do the kind of stop motion. Those are cool. But I think switching it up and keeping it not the same always, which of course we just said be consistent, but I think it keeps it interesting.
Yeah. Do you think having a video and a recipe is pretty engaging, or maybe just a photo and a recipe, or just a photo and a comment? Do you think like...
I think with a recipe, if you're going to do that, like go to your website too and have that recipe live somewhere so that you can share it and then people can go back to it, later, because I think if you're actually going to use a recipe, it's probably not going to be in the moment that you see it necessarily, that you're going to run to H-E-B, buy all the stuff and make it. So I would just have that content be something like more for a blog, but I do think that it's valuable content that you're giving to your audience. And so that can be great. Like she said, video is a lot of work. So don't exhaust your resources. If you have a social content creative team, like when I worked at Favor, we had, 8 people on a content team. And so we were able to actually create a lot of great content and engaging things for our followers. But if you don't have that and you're a smaller brand, like, do what you can, but don't try to force video.
Yeah, we can be scrappy, right? We can, if we have an iPhone 10, we can film. We can film with that, right? You
can film raw. And I think raw does better on Instagram and social media. I mean, I think people don't need the most clean-cut content that's edited.
Yeah, so you guys heard that. You can't use that as an excuse anymore. I don't have a $3,000 camera. No, you can use your camera. And people keep pounding that in my head. It's like, dude, you have an iPhone. Just pull that out. And the raw is authentic. And people connect with that and like that, and you become a little bit more vulnerable. And I don't know, people connect with that a lot better. What about being clear with your message? How important is that? Because I feel like sometimes I'm not clear enough, or sometimes I'm too wordy. Is it important to be clear, or will people see the image and understand?
Yeah, I mean, I think especially when you get more organized too with your posting and you're scheduling things out, like having a clear message and getting different points across in each of your posts can be really good. It also adds more value. Like we talked about earlier, people are going to follow when there's value there. So if your message that week is about a new flavor of your product and you're incorporating that particular flavor into a recipe, then I think that's great. And then maybe the next week you're talking about, a different flavor, but it's not a recipe. Now it's just, talking about, I don't know, where you would take that product and where you'd have a picnic or, showing it in a different setting.
Yeah. And I was going to ask, should we be short and sweet when we're posting stuff and describing things? And then I see your post and you have like extensive long things, but you also have a ton of engagement. So I
like to keep it shorter. I have some that I'm like, okay, I can't get everything in a short little bit, but I think if every single one is so long, like I'm not going to read it. Like I'm not going to read, if every post is super long. But if it's, you have one that ends up being super long when normally it's pretty concise, I feel like people are like, oh, this must be important and are more likely to pay attention. But if I'm having to really scroll to read your entire thing, I'm probably not going to.
Unless it's a really good story, then.
Yeah, you got to get people.
Hook me quick.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
my attention span is real short.
Yeah. And before posting, should we set goals or should we like remind ourselves why we're posting? Because sometimes, when I started my account, which isn't big, but when I would post, I would like finish a dish and I'd take a picture and post it and have no idea what I was doing. I just post it and then I'd always just post food pictures. But should I be, I don't know if opportunistic is a word, I think it is, but should I like say, look, I should post some recipe videos because then people will do this recipe and take pictures. Should we have goals when we're using social media? Or should we just be natural and just take pictures of whatever?
Yeah, I mean, when you can plan it out, it's obviously, I think, better overall strategy because you're going to, you could come up with a campaign where use this hashtag and share your moments using this product. And at the end of that, you're giving away a prize or something. You don't have to do that, but I'm just saying like that could be a fun, engaging way to get then your followers to come back and actually, feel like they're participating in something by following you.
Well, I mean, and then you can measure those results, right?
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. I think on that part though, like I know I do, and I'm sure Rachel does as well, get caught up in the likes game and like how many likes you get. And so I feel like, yes, it's good to set goals, but to not be too hard on yourself because sometimes, whether it's a weird day or whatever, I've had photos that I'm like, this is going to kill it. It's going to be great. I love this photo. And then it's like got the shittiest likes. And I'm like, cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
likes are really bad for self-esteem, and they actually might be going away because Instagram is testing.
Really?
They're saying it's like for mental health. They're like seeing a concern in people, judging their content just off likes, and that likes can even be inflated. They can be purchased these days. So it's really something that I think Instagram as a platform is looking at, and they're like, if we can't control this and it's making users upset, then let's take it away. And it's not the most important thing. The content should be standing out above that, and the comments and the conversations, like I think those are still great to see, but yeah, likes are they're arbitrary.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it's good to be like, oh, I hope this, reaches this amount of people, but to not like totally kill yourself over, oh, I didn't get this, like I didn't hit this number, or, I'm under 1,000 likes, this photo tanked, it's terrible.
Yeah.
You don't control the algorithm at the end of the day. Instagram does. And,
I'll have some photos and I'm like, this wasn't even that cool. And then it's got like all these likes. I'm like, okay, what am I doing?
Well, one of the things I've noticed, so I have a rule of thumb, which is I would like to get 10% of my followers to like my picture. And I think if 10% of followers like your picture, then it's an authentic account. Because like I said earlier, you have the accounts with 50,000 followers and they have 100 likes per picture. I'm like, where did you find those 50,000 followers? They're not real. Yeah. But another thing, and give me some advice on this. One of the things I notice is every time I post a picture on my company's page that has me in it or people in it, way more likes, way more comments, way more likes.
Yeah.
And I have this issue. It's like, well, I don't want to keep posting pictures of myself in this company, but I get way more engagements. What do I do? Why does that happen?
I think it's part of, having that personal connection to something. I know when I was doing mostly just travel photos, I was seeing amazing places and I'd post that, but then I'd post one of me and it does way better. Like me in the photo does infinitely better than just a pretty landscape.
Is it because people connect somehow?
I think it's like the personal connection kind of thing. You can't really connect with a landscape.
Yeah, it's kind of the reason that I rebranded my account about a couple of years ago. It was mostly food from the beginning. And then I decided wow, these people that are in the photos and brands were wanting that too. They want a personality. They want to see someone, demonstrating their product. So just, a plate of chips on its own with salsa is great. But what if it's a Super Bowl party and there's a big group of people enjoying those chips? That's more inviting. That's where I want to be.
Yeah. But I mean, so let's say we have a brand who does potato chips. The bag of potato chips, packaging's nice. Yeah, it looks good. But if it's the bag of potato chips in the middle of a Super Bowl party, people are like, oh, this is a damn good bag of potato chips, right? It's way more authentic. Sweet. How should us brands approach you bloggers when we want help or advice or collaborations? What's the best way y'all recommend? And we know not to do the calamari.
It's not your best method.
I think email is the best way to reach out. I think like we were saying earlier with the DMs, we get a lot of them. And so, it's hard. You lose track searching through DMs if you don't respond right away. It's hard to even find that message again. So use email, be professional, personalize the message. People put, hey, Austin all the time in my emails. And I'm like, they obviously don't know my name or they haven't looked at my account. So, personalize that. Then I think when you're, introduce your product, obviously, tell them the details, tell them if you're local and you're trying to get local people, that might be a cool draw because people love to support local in Austin. So I definitely recommend that. And then I would just say you can put some ideas out there in an ask. Don't be too specific or give set parameters of this is exactly what we want, yes or no. Especially if you're asking to trade, a product, be understanding that this person is making a business out of this. So, consider maybe putting some budget behind it. But if you don't have budget, you can also be transparent about that and just offer to send a product for review or, kind of see what they'd be willing to do.
Because we the idea is to bring value to you guys as well, right? So don't just say, hey, please post my brand on your thing. It's like, no, should we be sending you guys free samples or coming up like, oh, I saw this campaign. I want to do something like that. Can you help me design something?
That's the best introduction for sure. I mean, if you're reaching out to an influencer who might not have had your product before, I mean, obviously they need to try it before they say they're going to post it anyway. So just offer to send samples and then kind of see where it goes from there. I mean, you could encourage them to share a story, unboxing or whatever. People do that. But I mean, don't necessarily expect that. Like, kind of let them, experience that product and then keep the conversation going. The first influencers that you reach out to should be the ones that you're trying to build relationships with more long term. So you can keep working together.
And would you say try to find influencers who have kind of the same audience as you do? Because at first I reached out to anybody, like shoe influencers, for example. And then I was like, no, maybe I should focus on like grillers or keto people or, South Americans, right? Should we focus on influencers? Yeah,
I mean, and think about what is their demographic too. So you might not know off the top of your head, but you can guess that somebody, like myself who's posting food and very specifically in Austin is going to have the audience that lives in that city and that, cares about food and restaurants and such. So looking at their content, you might be able to tell a little bit more. And I know you probably have a little bit of an international audience, but also focused on Austin too some. So
what are some perks of working in Austin, which is such a crazy food scene and such a tech startup hub? Like, what are some perks, you guys? Lots of free samples?
That's cool.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, like, especially in the past couple of years, I've noticed that a lot more bigger brands are coming into Austin. And so being a blogger, that's really exciting. And just overall for our economy, like, people are investing in Austin as a place to launch their product. Like, a lot of Away Luggage is a great example of a brand that's really big and trendy. And I think they launched in, like, 8 cities where they did stores. And Gwyneth Paltrow launched Goop here for a couple months and did a pop-up. So seeing really big brands like that coming in, and it's really cool. It's great. It provides business opportunities for us as bloggers. They're pouring money into the Austin economy and supporting. So,
that's awesome. And I get my favorite question I wanted to ask, and we touched a little bit on this earlier, but how can, obviously our brand is on Instagram, it's representing us, but how does the person behind the Instagram account manage vulnerability when they're sharing content? Like, is this picture good enough? Is this picture going to get enough likes? Is this recipe going to be good enough? What are some tips to manage that for people who are starting these brands?
I mean, I just kind of developed a tough skin. Like, it sucks at first. I started mine on my personal account. And so I could see people unfollowing me because I was posting more, and it really hurt my feelings. I used to take it so personally, and if you get a nasty comment, it does hurt, but you kind of not get used to it, but you're like, all right.
Yeah, you have to realize that it doesn't define you.
Right.
Someone saying that, there are going to be people out there that are going to be critical and troll you on the internet. It doesn't define what you're doing. For every mean comment, there's probably 20 great ones or more, probably more. But, generally, I mean, sometimes I'll even block people if they just are blatantly rude. It's okay, there's no place for hate on this account. And I'm sorry, if I lose a follower over this, that's fine by me.
Yeah. Does it help to reread all the good comments, all the positive comments?
Yeah, I think it does. As much as I said I don't like getting so many DMs, but when someone DMs me or messages me and is your whatever really helped me. I love, if I get an encouraging message like that definitely makes me feel really good, and I like those. But I don't tend to get too many mean ones. Yeah. But. Yeah,
they're few and far between.
Yeah, it is tough though. It's easier said than done. Being just brush it off. Yeah. But it's kind of what you have to do, and you're choosing to put yourself out there like that, and it comes with the territory. It doesn't mean it's okay that people are doing that.
Yeah.
But having a shell and being able to put up a little bit of a guard.
I guess because you're behind the screen, just go out there, try it, be vulnerable, just post it, see if it works. Don't be so scared. to not share something.
Yeah.
Don't let it define you. Like what you're sharing, you shared it for a reason.
Yeah.
Like
You can always
stand
delete
behind.
it too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
know
you
exactly-
can delete it, but I wouldn't like recommend every time someone leaves
Yeah.
me a comment being like, archive.
Although
But-
I delete the comments.
yeah, delete the
There you
comments.
go.
But
Yeah.
You
that's
don't want
fine.
that bad stuff on there.
No.
Yeah, bad juju.
Well, I think that's pretty much everything. I think you guys overloaded us on beautiful information that we need, and it's stuff that we don't really know how to do. Having a great online presence has become like a full-time, very hard job, and for founders and entrepreneurs, it's like shit. I'm piled under work, and now now everyone's telling me this is a second job. So I think the information you guys provided was very helpful. Do you guys have any shout outs or anything? You want to
No, follow us.
Yeah, please do.
Please don't send me calamari and
Yeah, no,
other things.
no, please. Yeah, again, we had Chelsea Bancroft, One Chell of an Adventure. Follow her on Instagram. Very cool content. And Rachel Holtin, Austin Foodstagram, again on Instagram. And she has kick-ass food pictures. And I think that's it. Thank y'all for coming. I had a wonderful
much.
time.
Yeah, thank you.